Don't change your clock. We're actually on an hour early today. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, the U.S. Senate candidates spar over the Toma VA scandal. The executive director of the state fair is fired. A Grafton teacher who had been fired is reinstated by the school board. And a federal judge rules that the Obama administration was unconstitutionally spending money to subsidize health insurers without obtaining an appropriation from Congress. That whole Constitution thing. But we start with a high-stakes political drama, a meeting between Donald Trump and Paul Ryan. One of the unlikeliest chapters in a year of unlikely developments. Ryan, the House Speaker and the most powerful Republican in Washington, isn't ready yet to endorse Trump, his party's presumptive nominee. But they're talking, and both men describe the sit-down in positive terms.
Yeah, I think this is going in a positive direction, and I think this is a first very encouraging meeting. But again, in 45 minutes, you don't litigate all of the processes and all the issues and the principles that we are talking about.
Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litjens, Defense Attorney Dan Adams, and the President of Edge Messaging, Brian Fraley. So, is the Republican Party going to unify around Donald Trump, Brian?
Sort of. More than I'd like, but less than Trump would hope for. You will see, I believe Paul Ryan eventually is going to come around and do what he feels like he needs to do and unify the party. Most lawmakers will, but grassroots Republicans going to remain divided, especially here in Wisconsin. The Never Trump movement still is strong. There's still a lot of people who say never means never.
Okay, what is Ryan doing here? Because he's getting hit from both sides, from the people who are mad at him for not getting on the Trump train, and the Never Trump people going, why are you doing this dance with him?
Like anyone, you want my support, you need to come and earn it. And that's what he's basically telling Trump. Trump needs to court people, whether they've figured that out yet or not. But they need, if they want to win, they need to court non-believers.
So who needs who more? Does Ryan need Trump more than Trump needs Ryan? Who?
Well, they probably need each other, which is probably why he's going to.
Okay, Dan Adams.
Well, they absolutely need each other, and it's funny, you can tell there's really no love lost between them. But listen, Paul Ryan has two jobs. One is to maintain his majority, right? That's his whole job as Speaker. And two is to maintain his self-image, so he has a political career stepping stone. He may want to run for president in 4 years. Both of those require a unified Republican Party, because if he's seen as the guy who broke up the party, both those goals are going to end.
Okay, but there's actually a third job, which is also, to make sure, to protect some of those bedrock conservative principles here. And I'm trying to figure out, how are they going to reconcile this? You have these guys, they are polar opposites in every respect, in personality, in politics. So how do you square that circle?
Well, that's what he's trying to figure out right now, but I think it's a lose-lose for Speaker Ryan.
Okay, is it a lose-lose or a win-win? Or a win-lose?
It is going to be a win for Paul Ryan. These two people, like you were just alluding to, they are so different. Paul Ryan goes to the Lincoln Day dinners. He walks the parade. He knows the Republicans, and they look up to him, and I'm so glad to have him leading the Republican Party right now as our spokesman. Donald Trump has never thanked his volunteers. He spends election night in his penthouse by himself with his family. Donald Trump doesn't care about Republicans. He cares about himself, and that's it. But Paul Ryan actually cares about the brand of the Republican Party, what it stands for.
I don't know. The brand seems to be changing a lot. I think they're going to try to find one or two or maybe three issues they can come together around. And I think the key is going to be, and I hear that the Trumpster is going to release a list of potential court nominees, federal court nominees. That's the one issue that they can come together. I mean, he's using the Heritage Foundation to come up with these names.
Okay, here's the deal, though. There's a lot of happy talk, but there are still some real fundamental differences, and there are two problems for Paul Ryan with Donald Trump. His character and his principles, or his lack of principles. His character, the way he behaves in this campaign, the insults, the lashing out, he's not going to be able to do anything about, because Donald Trump's not going to change. A 69-year-old man is not going to change after a 45-minute meeting. And on the principles, the reality is that even if Donald Trump sits down with Paul Ryan and adopts every single aspect of that agenda, how do you know he's going to stick with it? He has.
Well, he's a liar, so I mean, you will never know.
Well, part of the problem is, here's a guy who has taken every position on every issue, and I know that we're supposed to think that, he's the guy that tells it straight, except he's all over the place. I think that I think that Paul Ryan really has two big questions in that meeting, which is, are you going to run for president as an adult and as a conservative? because we've seen no evidence so far that he is prepared to do that. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Paul Ryan. I mean, is there any doubt in your mind that Paul Ryan eventually comes around to supporting him?
He's eventually going to come around, especially if he's chairman of the convention. He's going to be nominated there. But I do think that Trump has to prove himself. When Paul Ryan said, earning the nomination to the Republican Party is something very, very special. I think he is playing such a role because he is representing all of us who yet are not supporting Donald Trump, but he's trying to pull Donald Trump in so that he can earn our support so we can quasi-unify.
Okay, I guess there's two schools of thought on all of this. The people are concerned about, down ballot damage if, in fact, the Democrats do well if Donald Trump somehow implodes on himself. So are Republicans better off joining themselves at the hip with Donald Trump, or trying to distance themselves?
The ones that do eventually acquiesce and bow before dear leader need to do so tepidly and just say, yeah, of course I'm voting for the Republican nominee, and here's why I'm supporting Ron Johnson, or here's why I'm supporting this congressperson.
So what is your glass half full this week? What is your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt, you are first.
My glass is half full because the state is looking at innovative programs to improve services and cut the cost of family care.
Michelle Litjens.
My glass is half full because the FBI director publicly disputed Hillary Clinton's claim that the FBI's email probe is just a security inquiry. It is half empty because we all know it doesn't matter and the DOJ will never charge her with anything, no matter what they find.
Dan Adams.
Well, my glass is half full because two fresh faces are challenging longtime incumbents for Milwaukee Assembly seats. Edgar Lynn is challenging Leon Young, and Marissa Bell Cabrera is challenging Josh Zepnick. I think both challengers will win. My glass is half empty because there are many seats going unchallenged, including those held by Chris Sinicki and Fred Kessler. Politicians, after all, are like diapers. They need changing, or, well, you get the idea.
Brian Fraley.
Nice. I once did a radio ad with that analogy. Anyway, my glass is half full because Paul Ryan has so far refused to kiss Donald Trump's ring. It's half empty because I do expect he'll eventually endorse him.
Well, my glass is half full because Speaker Paul Ryan is showing some leadership in trying to unite Republicans behind bedrock conservative principles. It's half empty because whatever deal he makes with Donald Trump can be blown up by a single tweet. Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows the Kentucky and Oregon primaries are 2 days away. The primary season ends in 23 days with contests in California and 5 other states. The Republican National Convention is 64 days away. The Democratic National Convention is 71 days away. And Election Day, November 8th, is 177 days from now. We will be right back. The big news last week was, of course, the Trump-Ryan drama, but in the midst of that, there was a high-profile endorsement of Ryan's primary challenger. Angered by Paul Ryan's refusal to immediately get on the Trump train, former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin announced that she was joining the campaign to defeat him here in Wisconsin.
His political career is over, but for a miracle, because he has so disrespected the will of the people.
Well, there was a problem with that. New poll shows Ryan leading his challenger, the Palin-backed Paul Nehlen, by a margin of, are you ready for this, 78% to 14%. Overall, the poll by Remington Research found that Ryan has a 79% approval rating among Republicans in his home district. That's consistent with the last Marquette University Law School poll that found that Ryan had an 81% approval rating back home. As for Palin's political clout, well, the Remington Research poll found that less than a fourth of Republicans in Ryan's district had a favorable opinion of her. So is Paul Ryan in any trouble?
Paul Ryan is not in any trouble. Sarah Palin has no idea what she's talking about. I'm surprised she came back to Wisconsin after the reception that she had when she spoke here a few months ago. And when she said that he's not listening to the will of the people, obviously Paul Ryan's listening to the will of the people in his district because Ted Cruz won overwhelmingly in his district. Paul Ryan is home. Paul Ryan knows his people. He is not going to be Eric Cantor because he is nothing like Eric Cantor.
Okay, but this is one of those stories. The national media has been focusing a lot on this story. You have some high-profile national conservative, you have national Tea Party organizations saying they want to oust Paul Ryan. Give me a sense of what's going on here.
All right. Well, let's take out the hypocrisy of a woman who quit halfway through her first term, saying that Ryan is abandoning his position and abandoning his responsibility. Let's take that off the table. And let's just talk about his challenger, okay? His challenger, Paul Nehlen, a carpetbagger at best, really, okay? No one down there knows him. If anyone in the 1st Congressional District has heard of him, give me a call. We're trying to figure out who this guy is, right? He hasn't voted in, I think he's voted in 3 of the last 23 elections. He is an occasional resident of Wisconsin, okay? He is a creature of this alt-right, Breitbart alternative, and he will raise about $2 million, I think, from these people nationally who want to send a message to Paul Ryan. He will cause a lot of mischief, but he has no chance in hell.
Paul Ryan has never lost touch with the folks back home, and I think that's one of the big differences. Your take on this?
Well, I don't know what's going on in Janesville. I'm a Beloit guy, of course. You know, what's interesting is that
Sarah Palin.
If you guys had your way in 2008, she would have been elected vice president, would be ending her vice presidential term come next January. But listen, she is the prototype of the Trump celebrity kind of vapid appeal to the tribalism of people, not policy or actual facts.
Think about, by the way, you know, where we are in the age of Trump, that Sarah Palin is an arbiter of what is acceptable rational discourse among Republicans. Your take, Mikel Holt.
Well, it's pretty obvious. She's been smoking a lot of that walrus dung, going up in smoke.
Okay, is that a thing? Is that, you can smoke that? Really? That's a thing?
She can. I mean, look at her face. I mean, no, I don't think this have any impact. Matter of fact, this might be considered an endorsement of Ryan, because anything she says, people automatically assumes is idiotic.
She was once a rock star among Republicans. You see from those numbers that she's lost that. I mean, Michelle was, made a reference to that speech at Serb Hall the Friday before the primary. I mean, it was probably one of the worst political speeches, worst received political speeches anybody can remember. You know, her decline has been rather dramatic. But also, what an amazing moment we have in American politics, where the GOP vice presidential nominee in 2008 is now trying to end the political career of the GOP vice presidential nominee of 2012. I also thought it was interesting that now Donald Trump tried to distance himself from her, but the contrast between the Trump camp and Ryan, the Trump camp responding by loosing the flying monkeys against Paul Ryan, the attacks, the insults, the threats, whereas Ryan is trying to be conciliatory here. He's trying to win over. He's trying to make the case. And you really do see, once again, these two very diametrically opposed wings of the party and the approach. So you don't see any shot here. There's no vulnerability.
The guy has no shot, but he'll get plenty of attention because there's plenty of people that want to feed that myth that he has a chance. But
okay, you may not want to hear it, but we will tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Mikel Holt, you are first.
Well, Chief Ed Flynn believes that unless you're a drug dealer or a gang member, you don't have to worry about being shot in Milwaukee. Well, Chief, try selling that swamp land to Zalea Jenkins, Layla Peterson, or Sierra Guyton. None of those children sold any drugs unless it was baby aspirins.
Michelle Litjens.
A recent study revealed that students who use digital devices in class perform worse on exams. So to parents and school boards, students do not learn better or more when they have iPads or phones in the classroom. So let's stop wasting money on technology in school and let's get back to teaching.
Dan Adams.
Well, my advice is for Ron Johnson. Take a vote on Merrick Garland, the Supreme Court nominee. Do you really want to see who President Clinton or, God forbid, President Trump nominates next year?
Brian Fraley.
To those Republican lawmakers who feel they have to take one for the team and endorse Trump, think long and hard. Do you cast aside your misgivings and everything you've thought and said about him just because others have?
Well, my unsolicited advice is to UW system professors. Whine less, teach more. Next on Sunday Insight, UWM professors give the system president and the Board of Regents a failing grade. And as we go to break, be careful what you say. Washington Post columnist Dana Milbank made good on his promise to eat his words. 7 months ago, Milbank said that he would eat one of his columns if Donald Trump ever became the Republican presidential nominee. Milbank swallowed his pride and some newsprint. He ate a 9-course meal laced with paper from the October 4th edition of the Post. Milbank washed down the food with some of Trump's wine. We'll be right back. The faculty has no confidence. Faculty members at UW Milwaukee joined their colleagues on other campuses in passing resolutions of no confidence in Assistant President Ray Cross and the Board of Regents over changes in the tenure policy. And neither Cross nor Governor Scott Walker seem particularly bothered by that. Raycross said the criticism actually served to expose the real value of changing the lifetime job guarantee. In an email to one regent, he wrote, "I think faculty are hurting their arguments by claiming that they should not be laid off when they are no longer needed in a discipline or a program that is discontinued, and then claim that tenure should protect them in that situation. That is a union argument, not a tenure argument. When the trains kept brakemen for years after they were no longer needed, it was for the same reason, a job for life even when that job is no longer necessary." And Governor Walker made a similar point. In his weekly radio address, Walker said, "We believe the focus should be on providing students with the best education possible in a way that makes college affordable and accessible, replacing jobs for life tenure with reasonable expectations for teaching just makes sense." So does it, Dan Adams?
Oh, I completely agree with Ray Cross on this, and I know people may think I'm with the faculty, but absolutely not. Listen, he basically boiled down what tenure is supposed to be about. Yeah. It's so that you can have the fearless sifting and winnowing toward the truth.
Academic freedom.
Academic freedom. Yeah. The same stuff that McAdams at Marquette's being slammed for. It's not a lifetime job. It's not so you don't have to do your work, teach obscure things that students don't want to have, and deliver no value. It's so that you can actually pursue the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's also interesting that Wisconsin was the only state in the country that had tenure protections written into state law. And one of the things they do now is, well, what happens if you have a program that no students want to take? You know, can you discontinue that program? And is the faculty really arguing that they should just stay on the payroll even if
that's what
they're
doing, and then they pass the cost along to students?
Yeah. For the rest of the state, where only 26% of the state actually has a four-year degree. So I don't think they understand the political ramifications of doing this. There were legislators that fought the governor to reduce the amount of cuts for the UW system. And now they just went and said, you know, we deserve more, we deserve more. They don't understand what they're doing.
How does this play in the legislature?
I think this, like I said, is a big slap in the face to a lot of them who fought the extra mile. They could have used that money for K-12 education, and instead they decided to reduce the cuts to the UW system. I don't think they're going to fight that hard next time.
Well, on a strategic level, it's stupid to bite the hand that handles your budget. But on a global thing, this is really depressing. As a UW grad, the university could be the #1 economic driver in this state. People at the university cure cancer. The UW could be a wonderful thing, and it is a wonderful thing. But the only time, or the most often when people hear about the university, it's when some stupid liberal student group does something, or when the professors do something stupid like this.
Mikel Holt, you want to break out your world tiniest violin for the professors here? They don't have a job?
Well, it's a little bit bigger than that, you know, because I think they should have tenure, you know, trying to make this. Well,
they have tenure, but if their program is discontinued, then
you know, I mean, if you got a PhD, you should be able to teach, you know, English or literature. I mean, you just shift them over to another position.
It doesn't quite work that way in
on
academia.
the flip side, you know, I remember what happened at MPS with teachers who had tenures who were sticking kids' heads in toilets, and you couldn't get rid of them.
This is why this is really a bad idea. You know, there's a higher education bubble out there. There's going to be a wave of higher education reform, and this is just going to stoke those fires. So what is it you don't get this week? Let's go around the table. Mikel Holt, you're first.
Speaking of those Republicans at the state level, what I don't get is why they are so hesitant to tighten outdated gun control laws, including making the straw purchases a felony.
Michelle Litjens.
Charlie, I don't get how MPS has a 60% graduation rate, yet they feel it's a wise use of their limited resources to allocate $500,000 to Black Lives Matters issues.
Dan Adams.
Well, I don't get Republicans in Madison deferring millions of dollars of state debt for the second straight year. Folks, if you'd stop budgeting so tightly, you wouldn't have to pull these fiscal gimmicks.
Brian Fraley.
Charlie, what I don't get is, okay, Donald Trump has a history of pretending to be his own spokesman, a guy named John Miller. Many in the media knew about this and only busted him on this past Friday. What?
Well, what I don't get is why the Obama administration thinks that men who identify as women have more rights than women who are biologically women. Think about it. Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Mikel Holt, you're first.
Well, loser, Milwaukee wasn't on the list of the state's top middle-class cities, according to Pew Research Center. I guess when you have the highest black poverty rate in the country, it kind of like affects that statistic. But winner, prospective voters who haven't received their IDs can now use a receipt to vote. Now, if they just have somebody to vote for.
Michelle Litjens.
My winner is Senator Ron Johnson for proposing a right to try bill, which would help ALS patients and others gain access to drugs not approved by the FDA. People are dying, so let's get government bureaucracy out of the way to a possible life-saving cure. The loser this week is Facebook for promoting liberal stories and stifling conservative ones. We trust that what is popular on social media is popular because everyone is talking about it, not because a liberal editor wants us to read it. So much for everyone having a voice.
Dan Adams.
Well, my winner is Senator Liz Warren, who's been aggressively confronting Trump. I believe Warren will be the Democratic vice presidential nominee and will bring back the Bernie folks into the fold. My loser is Milwaukee Police Chief Ed Flynn, who recently joked about how not to get shot in Milwaukee. He should think of innocent victims' families before making light of tragedy, and maybe Tom Barrett should step up and correct his appointee.
Brian Fraley.
Okay, my winners are the grassroots Republicans who spent this weekend at the RPW convention in Green Bay. You are the heart and soul of the Republican Party. You're also my losers this week because the party's presumptive nominee for president is an unqualified boor.
Well, my loser is Sarah Palin. Has anyone fallen farther or faster than the former Alaska governor? Her descent into political incoherence and irrelevance was on full display last week, and that makes her my loser of the week, if not of the year. My winners, the 140 World War II and Korean War veterans who got to see their memorials Saturday on an honor flight. You are all heroes, and your service is both remembered and appreciated by a grateful nation. Thanks for joining us, and join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. NBC's coverage of Premier League Soccer Championship Sunday is next. Have a great week.